New Mexico Territory, 1874. A gentle breeze carried the scent of sage across Viola Barnes's small herb garden, offering brief respite from the New Mexico heat. Her fingers worked the rich soil with practiced care as she tended to the precious plants that had become her livelihood. Tucking a wayward strand of black hair behind her ear, she paused to gaze at the majestic mountains in the distance, their peaks painted in hues of purple and gold against the vast azure sky. 5 years had passed since she'd been cast out by her family in Virginia, her swollen belly evidence of what they'd called her moral failing. 5 years of building a life from nothing but determination and the knowledge stored in her worn, leather-bound medical journal. "Mama, look!" 6-year-old Catherine called from the doorway of their modest adobe house, holding up a small drawing. Her dark curls bounced with excitement as she ran toward Viola. "It's us in our house." Viola smiled, wiping her hands on her apron before kneeling to examine her daughter's creation. The child had captured their small homestead, nestled between red rock formations and sparse juniper trees, a place that had become their sanctuary. "It's beautiful, my sweet girl," she said, tracing the childish lines with her finger. Catherine had her father's eyes, deep brown with flecks of gold, the only reminder of the man who'd promised Viola the world before disappearing when she needed him most. As Viola gathered sage from her garden, Catherine followed close behind, asking questions as she always did. "When will Mrs. Rodriguez have her baby?" "Any day now. That's why I'm gathering extra supplies." Viola's reputation as a midwife and healer had grown steadily among the scattered families of the region. Mexican farmers, a few American settlers, and occasionally members from the nearby Apache tribes who approached her cautiously when their own medicine wasn't enough. By evening, as they shared a simple meal in their small kitchen, Viola noticed Catherine had barely touched her food. The child's usually rosy cheeks seemed pale in the lamplight. "I don't feel well, Mama," Catherine whispered, leaning against Viola's side. The night became a nightmare as Catherine's condition deteriorated rapidly. By midnight, she burned with fever, her small body trembling despite the blankets Viola piled atop her. None of the usual remedies, willow bark tea, cool compresses, or honey mixtures, seemed to help. Viola frantically consulted her medical journal, searching for answers as Catherine's breathing grew labored. "Please hold on," Viola whispered, pressing her lips to her daughter's forehead. "I'll find something to help you, I promise." Dawn found Viola making desperate preparations. She'd heard whispers from Mrs. Rodriguez about a rare herb that grew near the hidden waterfall in Coyote Canyon, golden seal mixed with a flower, that bloomed only near pure mountain springs. The journey would take most of the day, but Viola had no choice. She arranged for her neighbor, elderly Mrs. Hernandez, to watch over Catherine. The woman's weathered face creased with concern as she took Viola's hands in her own. "Be careful," Mrs. Hernandez warned, her accent thickening with worry. "The Apache have been seen near the waterfall. The cavalry stirred up trouble last month." "I'll be cautious," Viola promised, tucking her small knife into her boot. The sun climbed high as Viola followed the faint trail through rocky terrain. Her thoughts remained with Catherine, each step driven by maternal desperation. After hours of climbing, the distant sound of falling water reached her ears, guiding her forward through a narrow passage between towering red rocks. The sight that greeted her stole her breath, not just the waterfall cascading into a crystal-clear pool surrounded by lush vegetation, but the man standing beneath it. Viola instinctively pressed herself against the rocks, hidden in shadows. The Apache warrior stood chest-deep in the pool, water streaming down his copper skin. His long black hair clung to broad shoulders as he performed what appeared to be a ritual cleansing, his movements fluid and purposeful. Strange markings adorned his upper arms, symbols Viola didn't recognize. Something about him held her transfixed. Not fear, though perhaps it should have been. There was a dignity in his bearing, a harmony with the wilderness around him that made him seem as much a part of the landscape as the rocks and water themselves. When he turned slightly, Viola could see his profile, strong jaw, high cheekbones, and eyes that seemed to reflect the depth of the water itself. She knew she should leave, find the herbs quickly, and return to Catherine. Yet she remained frozen, watching this moment that felt sacred somehow. As she finally attempted to retreat, her foot dislodged a small stone. The tiny sound echoed like thunder in the canyon. The warrior turned instantly, water droplets flying from his hair. His hand moved to where a knife would have been, but finding nothing, he simply stood tall, unashamed of his near-nakedness, his gaze scanning the rocks. Their eyes met across the distance. Viola couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Those eyes held her captive, not with threat, but with something inexplicable. Recognition, perhaps, though they'd never met. The warrior made no move toward her, merely studied her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Viola began, but words failed her. In that suspended moment, she was acutely aware of her heartbeat, thundering in her chest like a stampede. The spell broke when a bird called overhead. Viola turned and fled, scrambling through the rocks, her cheeks burning with embarrassment and something else she couldn't name. Only when she was far enough away did she realize she'd forgotten to search for the healing herbs. "Blast it all," she muttered, forcing herself to turn back. Catherine needed her to be brave. When she returned to the waterfall, the warrior was gone. Viola quickly located the golden seal growing near the water's edge, but the special flower remained elusive. As the sun began its descent, desperation clawed at her. Catherine couldn't afford for her to return empty-handed. "You search for medicine," a deep voice said behind her. Viola whirled around, nearly losing her balance on the slippery rocks. The Apache warrior stood several paces away, now dressed in buckskin leggings and a vest, his hair tied back. His English, though accented, was clear. "How did you—" she began. "Your hands," he said simply, gesturing to her movements. "They are the hands of a healer." Viola straightened, lifting her chin. "My daughter is sick. I need the blue flower that grows here. I was told it can break fierce fevers." The warrior considered her for a long moment. "The flower you seek does not grow here anymore. The drought has been too long." Before Viola's hope could fully collapse, he continued, "But I know where it still lives, far side of the canyon." "Please," Viola said, the word catching in her throat. "I need it." "Why should I help you?" he asked, his expression unreadable. "Your people bring only destruction to mine." "I'm not—" Viola stopped herself. She couldn't deny her heritage. "I'm just a mother trying to save her child." Something shifted in his eyes. "How old?" "6," Viola whispered. The warrior was silent for so long that Viola thought he would refuse. Then, with a slight nod, he turned. "Follow." As they traversed terrain Viola would never have attempted alone, she gathered her courage. "Do you have a name?" He glanced back at her. "Hotah. What does it mean?" "Strong," he replied after a pause. "I'm Viola Barnes." "Viola," he repeated, the name sounding different in his mouth, almost musical. "The white woman who helps birth babies." Surprised, she asked, "You know of me?" "My people know all who live on these lands," Hotah said simply. "Even those who think themselves hidden." When they reached a sheltered alcove high above the canyon floor, Hotah pointed to a cluster of delicate blue flowers growing from a crack in the rock. "The sky tears," he said. 3 petals only. More will kill instead of heal." Viola carefully harvested the precious blooms, tucking them into her pouch. "Thank you," she said, meaning it from the depths of her soul. Hotah nodded once. "The child's fever. How long?" "Since yesterday." "These alone may not be enough," he said. "There is another way, but—" "But what?" His eyes met hers. "You must trust." The sun was setting as they descended the canyon, painting the rocks in shades of crimson and gold. Hotah moved with silent grace over terrain that would have been treacherous for Viola alone. He paused occasionally, gathering other plants, a bark here, a root there, tucking each into a small pouch at his waist. "These will strengthen the sky tears," he explained when he caught her watching. "The fever comes from water sickness. Many children have fallen ill this season." As the shadows lengthened, Viola's anxiety grew. "I need to get back to Catherine." "We go faster this way," Hotah said, leading her down a path she would never have discovered. "A shortcut my grandfather showed me." True to his word, they reached the edge of Viola's property as the first stars appeared. When her small adobe house came into view, lamplight glowing in the windows, Viola nearly wept with relief. Mrs. Hernandez emerged at the sound of their approach, her eyes widening at the sight of Hotah. She crossed herself quickly. "Catherine?" Viola asked, dismounting from her horse with trembling legs. "No change," the old woman replied, her gaze never leaving Hotah. The fever still burns. Inside, Catherine lay small and frail on her bed, her dark curls damp with sweat. Her breathing came in shallow gasps, her skin burning to the touch. Viola's heart clenched at the sight. "Mama," Catherine whispered, her eyes glazed and unfocused. "I'm here, my love." Viola knelt beside the bed, brushing back Catherine's hair. "I've brought medicine to make you better." She was aware of Hotah standing in the doorway, his tall frame silhouetted against the night sky. Mrs. Hernandez hovered nervously nearby, clearly unsure whether to leave Viola alone with the Apache warrior. "It's all right, Mrs. Hernandez," Viola said without taking her eyes from Catherine. "This is Hotah. He knows of a cure." The old woman hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "I will pray for the child," she said, gathering her shawl. At the door she paused. "Be careful, Viola," she added in a whisper before slipping into the darkness. Alone with Hotah and Catherine, Viola felt a strange mixture of fear and hope. What must we do? Hotah approached the bed, his movements deliberate, respectful. He knelt opposite Viola, studying Catherine's face. "First, we prepare the medicine." From his pouch, he withdrew the sky tears and the other plants they had gathered. Water, clean pot. Viola moved quickly to provide what he needed. Together, they prepared a bitter-smelling concoction over her kitchen fire. Hotah worked with practiced movements, crushing leaves, measuring with his fingers, his lips moving in what Viola realized were prayers or chants in his native tongue. "Now we must cool her body while the medicine works within," he explained, his dark eyes serious. "Cold cloths change often." Through the long night, they worked side by side. Viola administered the medicine, while Hotah placed cool, damp cloths on Catherine's forehead, chest, and wrists. He taught Viola pressure points on Catherine's feet that would help the medicine work faster, and sang low, rhythmic songs that seemed to ease the child's restless movements. Near dawn, Catherine's fever finally broke. Her breathing eased, and she fell into a peaceful sleep for the first time in days. Viola, exhausted beyond words, felt tears of relief slide down her cheeks. "She will heal now," Hotah said softly. "The worst has passed." "I don't know how to thank you," Viola whispered, aware that thank you was entirely inadequate for what he had done. Hotah shook his head. "No child should suffer when healing is possible." He rose to his feet, gathering his few belongings. "I must go before the sun rises. It is not safe for me to be seen here." Viola knew he was right. An Apache man found at a white woman's home would face immediate danger, regardless of his reason for being there. Yet she found herself reluctant to see him leave. "Wait," she said, hurrying to her supply cabinet. She selected several packets of herbs and medicines she thought might be useful to his people, things they might not have access to. "Please take these, for your tribe's healer." Hotah accepted the gift with quiet dignity. "For you have knowledge that could help my people, as I have knowledge that helped your daughter." He studied her face for a long moment. "Perhaps this is not our last meeting, Viola Barnes." As he slipped away into the pre-dawn shadows, Viola stood in her doorway watching until his silhouette disappeared among the juniper trees. Something had shifted in her world, though she couldn't yet name it. A connection had been formed, a bridge between two separate lives, begun with a chance encounter at a waterfall and strengthened through their shared effort to save Catherine. Inside, her daughter slept peacefully, her fever gone, her breathing steady. Viola sat beside her, stroking her dark curls, remembering the intensity in Hotah's eyes when they'd first met across the water. "The healer with strong hands," she murmured, recalling his words. Whatever lay ahead, Viola knew with certainty that her life would never be quite the same. Outside, the first rays of sunlight touched the red rocks of New Mexico, illuminating a world full of both danger and possibility. 3 days after their encounter at the waterfall, the morning sun filtered through the small window of Viola's adobe home, casting warm patterns across the wooden floor. Catherine sat propped against pillows in her bed. Color returned to her cheeks as she happily sipped the broth Viola offered. The fever that had nearly claimed her life had broken during the night, after Viola had administered the mixture of golden seal, sky tears, and the bitter root paste Hotah had prepared. "Is he coming back?" Catherine asked suddenly, her dark eyes, so like her father's, full of curiosity. "Who, sweetheart?" Viola asked, though she knew exactly whom her daughter meant. "The man with the long hair," Catherine replied, setting aside her bowl. "The one who sang to me when the bad dreams came." Viola's hand paused in midair. She hadn't left Catherine's side during her illness, except to prepare the medicines. She hadn't seen Hotah return, yet somehow he had come, singing ancient healing songs to her daughter, while Viola must have finally succumbed to exhaustion. "You remember him?" Viola asked softly. Catherine nodded. "His songs were different from yours, like the wind and water talking." She traced a pattern on her blanket. "They made the scary shadows go away." Viola tucked a stray curl behind Catherine's ear, wondering at the bond that seemed to have formed between her daughter and the Apache healer. "I don't know if he'll come back," she answered honestly. But he did. 3 evenings later, as Viola hung laundry on the line behind her house, she sensed rather than heard his presence. Turning slowly, she found Hotah standing at the edge of her property, as still as the juniper trees surrounding him. The fading light caught the planes of his face, highlighting his strong features against the darkening sky. "The child?" he asked simply. "She's well," Viola replied, her voice catching unexpectedly. "Thanks to you." Hotah nodded once, satisfaction briefly softening his stoic expression. In his hands, he held a small bundle wrapped in soft leather. "More medicine. For next time." As Viola approached to accept his gift, she noticed the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes constantly scanned the horizon. "You're taking a risk coming here," she realized aloud. "Yes." No explanation followed. None was needed. They both understood the danger an Apache faced approaching a white settlement, even one as isolated as hers. "Why?" she asked, genuinely puzzled by his return. Hotah's dark eyes studied her, seeming to look beyond her face to something deeper. "You did not run to soldiers when you saw me at the water. You did not scream." He paused, searching for the right words. "You looked without fear." "I was afraid," Viola admitted, remembering her racing heart at the waterfall. "Not of me," he countered with quiet certainty. "Of what you felt." Heat rushed to Viola's cheeks. How could he know the confusion of emotions that had swept through her that day, the forbidden thoughts that had visited her in the darkness since? Before she could respond, Catherine's voice rang out from the doorway. "Mama, I finished my letters." The little girl stopped when she spotted Hotah, but instead of fear, curiosity brightened her features. "You came back!" To Viola's surprise, Hotah's stern expression softened as he looked at Catherine. He crouched to meet her eye level, though still maintaining a respectful distance. "You are stronger now." Catherine nodded solemnly. "Mama says you helped make me better." "The medicine of my people and your mother's knowledge together," he corrected. From a pouch at his waist he withdrew a small carved wooden animal, a little horse with delicate markings. "For your brave spirit." Catherine's face lit up as she accepted the gift, turning it over in her small hands with wonder. "Thank you. Do you want to see my drawings?" "Catherine," Viola began, uncertain about encouraging such familiarity. "It is well," Hotah said, rising. To Catherine he added, "Another time, perhaps." After Catherine reluctantly returned inside, a weighted silence fell between them. Viola finally broke it. "The cavalry has increased patrols since the incident at Cooper's ranch. It's not safe for you to be seen here." "You worry for my safety?" A hint of surprise colored his voice. "I do," Viola admitted, surprising herself with the depth of her concern. "My neighbor, Mrs. Hernandez, knows I went to the waterfall. If she saw you here—" Hotah nodded his understanding. "The water is sacred to my people. I go there to pray, to remember my father's teachings." After a moment's hesitation, he added, 4 days from now, when the moon is half full, if you wish to learn more of our healing ways." It was an invitation, one that propriety, safety, and common sense all demanded she decline. Yet the memory of Catherine's recovery, of how his knowledge had saved her daughter when Viola's own had failed, made her nod. 4 days, she confirmed, sealing a pact that would change both their lives forever. The half-moon hung low in the sky as Viola picked her way carefully along the narrow trail to the waterfall. She had left Catherine sleeping peacefully under Mrs. Hernandez's watchful eye, claiming a late-night delivery as her reason for going out. The excuse would hold for tonight, but Viola knew she couldn't rely on it indefinitely. The waterfall looked different in the moonlight, more mysterious, the cascading water shimmering like liquid silver. Hotah waited on a flat rock beside the pool, so still he might have been carved from the stone itself. "You came," he said as she approached, no surprise in his voice, only quiet acknowledgement. "I want to learn," Viola replied, settling beside him on the rock, careful to maintain a proper distance between them. "For Catherine, and for others, I might help." Hotah nodded, reaching into a deerskin pouch. "Tonight, I show you the listening plants, those that tell us what sickness they cure by their appearance." He held up a twisted root. "This grows like a man bent with pain. It eases the joints when they swell and hurt." The lesson continued as the night deepened around them. Hotah showed her plants she had passed 100 times without recognizing their value, explained how the cycle of the moon affected their potency, demonstrated how to prepare medicines in ways that preserved their spirit as well as their physical properties. Viola found herself captivated, not just by the knowledge but by the way he imparted it, with reverence, patience, and a profound connection to the natural world that made her Western medical training seem suddenly mechanical and incomplete. "Your people," she ventured as he finished explaining the uses of a particular bark, "they must value your healing skills greatly." A shadow passed across Hotah's face. "Some do. Others think I spend too much time learning the ways of enemies." He looked out across the moonlit canyon. "My father was a great medicine man. When he died, many wanted me to follow only his path, not to seek knowledge from the Spanish or the white doctors." "Yet you do," Viola observed. "Healing should know no boundaries," Hotah said simply. "Pain is pain, whether in an Apache body or a white one." The philosophy resonated deeply with Viola, who had often been criticized for treating patients others deemed unworthy. "My family disowned me when I became pregnant without a husband," she found herself saying. "But even before that, they disapproved of my interest in medicine. They said it wasn't proper for a lady to learn such things." "Your people have strange ideas of propriety," Hotah commented, a rare hint of humor in his voice. Viola surprised herself by laughing softly. "Yes, I suppose we do." As the night grew late, they parted with an agreement to meet again. What began as an exchange of medical knowledge gradually evolved over the weeks that followed. Under the stars, Hotah taught Viola the medicinal properties of plants she'd overlooked, while she shared her knowledge of childbirth and European remedies. Their conversations expanded beyond healing. Hotah spoke of his tribe's struggles as white settlers pushed them from ancestral lands, while Viola revealed the painful details of her exile from Virginia society. "They called me ruined," she said one evening, fingers trailing in the cool water of the pool. "My own parents claimed I had brought shame upon our name." "Your people have strange ideas of shame," Hotah observed. "Among my tribe, a child is a blessing, regardless of how it comes." "And the father?" Viola asked, curious about Apache customs. "A man who does not acknowledge his child is no man at all," Hotah said firmly. "He has no place among us." His words soothed an old wound in Viola's heart, the abandonment by Catherine's father when she needed him most. In the Apache's simple statement of values, she found a validation she hadn't realized she still sought. As summer ripened toward autumn, their relationship deepened beyond teacher and student. Viola found herself watching the sun's position with anticipation on their meeting days, her heart quickening at the thought of seeing him. They were careful, meeting only when the moon provided just enough light to see but not enough to be seen clearly by others, speaking in low voices, leaving separately. Catherine, too, grew fond of Hotah, who never arrived at their home without a small gift for her, a carved animal, a special stone, or a story that made her eyes widen with wonder. To Viola's surprise, the child began picking up words in Apache, repeating them with perfect pronunciation that made Hotah smile, one of his rare, transformative smiles. "She has a good ear," he commented one day, as Catherine correctly identified plants he had taught her. "And a good heart. She does not see differences as barriers." "Children rarely do," Viola replied, "until they're taught to." The simple observation hung between them, a recognition of the world that would eventually intrude on Catherine's innocent acceptance, the same world that made their own growing connection so dangerous. On an evening when early frost silvered the canyon rocks, Hotah arrived at their meeting place with tension evident in every line of his body. His usual calm seemed disrupted, his movements more abrupt than Viola had ever seen. "What's wrong?" she asked immediately. Soldiers? He replied grimly. Many. They burn Apache camps, claiming retaliation for cattle theft. That's terrible, Viola said, genuine outrage in her voice. Are your people safe? For now. We have moved deeper into the mountains. He hesitated, conflict clear in his expression. I should not have come tonight. It puts you at risk to be seen with me. I'm not afraid, Viola said, though it wasn't entirely true. She feared, but not for the reasons he meant. You should be. Hotah's voice was tight with concern. Lieutenant Davis leads the soldiers. He is a man who enjoys cruelty. Viola's blood ran cold at the name. Lieutenant Davis had stopped at her home twice in recent months, ostensibly to ensure her safety as a woman living alone, but his lingering gaze and suggestive comments had made his true intentions clear. He came to my house last week, she admitted. Asked questions about you. Hotah went still. What questions? If I'd seen any Apache near my property, if I would report it immediately if I did. Viola moved closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body in the chill evening air. I lied to him. Their eyes met in the silver moonlight, and something shifted between them. The carefully maintained distance, physical and emotional, suddenly seemed unbearable. This cannot be, Hotah whispered, even as his hand rose to touch her cheek with unexpected gentleness. Why not? Viola challenged, though she knew the answer. Every law of society, every boundary between their worlds forbade it. Your life would be forfeit. Catherine would have no mother. And yours? Viola asked. What would your people say about a warrior who took a white woman to his heart? Pain flashed across his features. There are those who would call for my death, others who would merely cast me out. His thumb traced the curve of her jaw. But I am already cast out in my thoughts. Since the day at the waterfall, I have walked between worlds. When their lips finally met, it was like the collision of those worlds, tentative at first, then with an urgency that had built through months of denied longing. Hotah's arms encircled her, drawing her against him with a reverence that brought tears to Viola's eyes. This is madness, she whispered against his mouth. Yes, he agreed, his forehead pressed to hers. Beautiful madness. The weeks that followed were filled with a bittersweet joy, their meetings now charged with an intimacy that transcended physical boundaries. They spoke of impossible futures, of places where they might live without judgment, of the life they might build together if the world were different. Catherine, with a child's intuition, sensed the change in their relationship. Hotah makes you smile, she observed one morning as they gathered eggs from the small chicken coop behind their house. Not like when the doctor from town visits. Viola nearly dropped the basket of eggs. What do you mean, sweetheart? Your eyes smile too when Hotah is here, Catherine explained simply. They don't do that for anyone else. Out of the mouths of babes, Viola thought, marveling at her daughter's perception. Hotah is a special friend, she said carefully. Is he going to stay with us someday? Catherine asked, her expression hopeful. The innocent question pierced Viola's heart. I don't know, she answered truthfully. It's complicated. Catherine considered this with a seriousness beyond her years. Because he's Apache and we're not. Yes, Viola admitted. Some people think Apache people and white people shouldn't be friends. Those people are stupid, Catherine declared with childish certainty. Despite the gravity of their situation, Viola couldn't help laughing. Perhaps they are, she agreed, but they're also powerful, and that makes them dangerous. As autumn deepened, Viola began receiving unexpected visitors. The doctor from Las Cruces stopped by, ostensibly to discuss a difficult case, but lingering to suggest a more personal relationship. The widowed blacksmith from the nearest settlement brought gifts and barely concealed proposals. Even the circuit-riding preacher made a point of mentioning how a woman alone might benefit from male protection. It was Mrs. Hernandez who finally explained the sudden interest. Lieutenant Davis has been asking questions, the old woman told Viola one afternoon as they shelled peas on the porch, about your situation. My situation? Viola repeated, though she understood perfectly well. Mrs. Hernandez nodded, her lined face serious. A woman alone, raising a child, refusing proper society. It makes people talk. And the lieutenant, he listens to talk. I see, Viola said quietly. There is more, Mrs. Hernandez continued reluctantly. He asks about visitors. About whether you receive any unusual callers. Viola's fingers stilled on the P's. What have you told him? Nothing, the old woman assured her. My eyes may be failing, but they're still sharp enough to see a good man when he crosses my path, no matter the color of his skin. She patted Viola's hand. But be careful, Nina. Davis is not a man who accepts refusal well. That night, Viola waited anxiously at the waterfall, needing to warn Hotah about the lieutenant's inquiries. When he finally arrived, she saw immediately that he already knew. His expression was grave, his movements more cautious than usual. Davis sent men to follow you tonight, he said without preamble. I led them away, but they will return. Fear gripped Viola. How did they know? Someone has been watching your home. Hotah's jaw tightened. A woman, the one with red hair who lives near the crossroads. Mrs. Cooper, Viola realized with a sick feeling. The woman had never forgiven Viola for treating Apache patients, blaming all natives for the death of her brother in a raid years earlier. We cannot meet here again, Hotah said, his voice heavy with regret. It is too dangerous. Where then? Viola asked, fighting the panic rising within her. The thought of not seeing him was unbearable. Hotah was silent for a long moment, clearly weighing their limited options. There is a place, a cave half a day's ride north. My people consider it sacred, so few whites know of it. He described its location in detail. In 7 days, when the moon is dark, bring Catherine. It will be safer than leaving her. As they parted that night, their embrace held the desperation of uncertain futures. Hotah's lips lingered on hers, his hands memorizing the contours of her face as if he feared it might be the last time he would touch her. If I cannot come, he said softly, go to the Spanish mission at San Xavier. Ask for Father Miguel. Tell him you seek the divided path. He will help you. Why wouldn't you come? Viola asked, alarmed by the contingency plan. Hotah's expression remained carefully neutral. The world changes quickly these days. It is good to have many paths prepared. As she watched him disappear into the darkness, Viola felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn night. For the first time since their relationship began, she faced the stark reality of their situation. Not just the social boundaries they had crossed, but the very real danger they now faced from those determined to enforce those boundaries. 7 days, she thought, returning to where her horse was tethered. 7 days to prepare for whatever lay ahead, whether it was a clandestine meeting or the beginning of a new and uncertain journey. In her pocket, she carried the small carved bear Hotah had given her that night, a symbol of protection, he had explained. She closed her fingers around it, drawing strength from its solid presence as she rode home through the moonlit New Mexico night, a woman caught between worlds, heading toward a future she could neither predict nor avoid. 7 days after their last meeting at the waterfall. The snow came early that year, dusting the red rocks with white and bringing an uneasy quiet to the territory. Viola pulled her worn shawl tighter around her shoulders as she guided her horse along the narrow mountain path. Catherine rode before her, bundled in layers of wool, her small face partially hidden by the scarf wrapped around her head. Are we going to see Hotah? Catherine asked, her voice muffled against the biting wind. Yes, Viola answered, scanning the rugged landscape for the landmarks Hotah had described. If we can find the place. The journey had been more difficult than anticipated. Fresh snow concealed the trail markers, and twice they had been forced to backtrack when their path disappeared into treacherous terrain. Now, with the short winter day already waning, Viola felt the first tendrils of doubt. Had she misunderstood Hotah's directions? Was she leading her daughter into danger rather than towards safety? There, Catherine suddenly pointed, the 3 tall rocks that look like men standing together. Hotah told me about them in his stories. Viola followed her daughter's gesture and felt a surge of relief. The distinctive rock formation stood sentinel over a narrow cleft in the mountainside, exactly as Hotah had described. They had found the sacred cave. As they approached, Viola sensed movement within the shadows of the entrance. Her hand moved instinctively to the knife at her belt, but then a familiar figure emerged. Hotah stood framed in the cave opening, his dark hair pulled back, his expression a mixture of relief and concern. You are late, he said simply. I feared you would not come. We got lost, Catherine explained before Viola could respond. But I remembered the 3 standing men from your stories. A rare smile touched Hotah's lips as he helped them dismount. "You have good eyes, little one." Inside, the cave opened into a surprisingly large chamber. A small fire burned in a stone circle, providing both warmth and dim illumination. The walls were adorned with ancient paintings, hunting scenes, spirit figures, and symbols whose meanings Viola could only guess at. "This place is sacred to your people," she observed, as Hotah took their horses to a sheltered area deeper in the cave. "Yes," he confirmed upon returning. "The ancestors spoke to the Great Spirit here. Few outsiders have ever seen it." His gaze lingered on Catherine, who was already exploring the cave with childlike curiosity. "I would not have brought you here if there were another safe place." The gravity in his voice sent a chill through Viola that had nothing to do with the winter cold. "What's happened?" she asked quietly. Hotah's expression darkened. "Lieutenant Davis has made his accusations public. He claims you harbor Apache spies and share information that endangers settlers." He met her eyes directly. "There is talk of arrest." Viola's knees weakened, and she sank onto a flat rock near the fire. "Arrest? On what charges?" "Treason," Hotah said grimly. "Aiding enemies of the United States." "That's absurd," Viola exclaimed, then lowered her voice when Catherine glanced over. "I've done nothing." "Truth matters little to men like Davis," Hotah interrupted. "He has convinced others that your healing work with my people threatens the territory's safety." His jaw tightened. "And he has spread other rumors about the nature of our meetings." Heat rushed to Viola's cheeks, not from embarrassment but from anger. "So a woman who chooses her own companions must be a traitor." "A woman who chooses an Apache companion," Hotah corrected softly. "That they cannot forgive." The reality of their situation settled over Viola like a heavy blanket. She had known their relationship was forbidden, had understood the social boundaries they crossed, but somehow the actual consequences had remained abstract, until now. "What do we do?" she asked, instinctively reaching for his hand. Hotah's fingers intertwined with hers, warm and steady despite the danger surrounding them. "We have 3 choices," he said. "You could return, deny everything, claim I forced you to meet me. With no proof beyond rumors, they might believe you." "No," Viola said immediately. "I won't lie about us, and I won't let them paint you as a villain." Hotah nodded, as if he had expected this answer. "Then we can try to reach Mexico. Beyond the border, Davis has no authority." "Mexico?" Viola repeated, considering the immense journey such a plan would entail. "That's hundreds of miles through dangerous country." "Yes," Hotah acknowledged. "But there are others who would help us. Mexicans, peaceful Apache, even some whites who do not share Davis's hatred." His thumb traced small circles on the back of her hand. "There is a place, south of the border, where people of different bloods live together. My mother's cousin fled there years ago. She would welcome you and Catherine." "Us," Viola corrected firmly. "Not just me and Catherine, you as well." A shadow passed over Hotah's face. "That is the 3rd choice. I lead Davis away while you and Catherine find safety elsewhere." "No." The single word contained all her fear, all her stubborn determination. "I won't leave you behind. Not now. Not after everything." "Viola, we go together, or not at all," she insisted. "I've lost too much already to lose you too." Their quiet argument was interrupted by Catherine's return to the fireside. The child's perceptive eyes moved between the adults, sensing the tension. "Are the bad soldiers coming for us?" she asked with disconcerting directness. Viola and Hotah exchanged glances, silently agreeing not to shield her from the truth. At 6, Catherine had already endured more hardship than many adults. She deserved honesty now. "Yes," Viola answered. "Lieutenant Davis wants to separate us from Hotah." Catherine's small face hardened with a determination that mirrored her mother's. "I won't let them. Hotah belongs with us." Something in the child's simple declaration seemed to resolve the conflict between the adults. Hotah crouched to meet Catherine's eyes. "Then we must travel far away, little one. Leave your home behind. Are you brave enough for such a journey?" Catherine nodded solemnly. "I'm not afraid if you and Mama are with me." The decision made, they spent the evening planning their escape. Hotah sketched a rough map in the dirt floor of the cave, outlining the route they would take. Southwest through the mountains, avoiding main trails and settlements, until they reached the border. "We leave at first light," he said. "The snow will cover our tracks, and Davis will not expect us to travel in such weather." That night, as Catherine slept wrapped in blankets near the fire, Viola and Hotah sat at the cave entrance, watching the snow fall in silent veils across the moonlit landscape. "Are you certain?" Hotah asked quietly. "Once we begin this journey, there is no returning to your old life." Viola thought of the home she had built, the practice she had established, the few friends she had made despite her status as an outsider. Then she looked at Hotah, at the man who had saved her daughter, who had shown her a deeper understanding of healing, who had awakened feelings she had thought forever buried after Catherine's father abandoned her. "My old life ended the day I saw you at the waterfall," she said simply. "Everything since has been the beginning of something new." His hand found hers in the darkness, their fingers intertwining as naturally as the branches of trees growing side by side. No further words were needed as they sat together, two people from different worlds, facing an uncertain future with only their love and determination as weapons against the forces aligned against them. They departed at dawn, traveling light, taking only what was essential for survival. The snow had stopped during the night, leaving a pristine white blanket across the landscape that would make tracking difficult for any pursuers. Hotah led the way, moving with the confident grace of one born to this rugged terrain, while Viola followed with Catherine riding before her. For 3 days, they made steady progress through the mountains, avoiding the few settlements scattered across the territory. Hotah proved an expert guide, finding game trails and hidden passages that Viola would never have discovered alone. At night, they sheltered in caves or made simple lean-tos, huddling together for warmth against the winter chill. Catherine adapted to their nomadic existence with surprising resilience, treating the journey as an adventure rather than a flight from danger. Hotah taught her tracking skills and the Apache names for animals they encountered, while Viola instructed her in identifying winter plants that could serve as food or medicine. On the 4th day, as they descended from the higher elevations, Hotah suddenly raised his hand, signaling for them to stop. He dismounted in one fluid motion, pressing his ear to the ground. "Riders," he said grimly. "Many. Coming fast." Viola's blood ran cold. "Davis?" "Yes." Hotah was already moving, scanning their surroundings with tense concentration. "They must have found our trail despite the snow." "How?" Viola asked, helping Catherine from the horse. "A tracker," Hotah replied. "Someone who knows these mountains as I do." His expression darkened. "Jenkins." The name sent a shiver through Viola. Jenkins was infamous throughout the territory, a half-Apache, half-white man who had rejected his native heritage to become one of the most ruthless Indian hunters in the Southwest. If he was tracking them, their chances of escaping undetected had just diminished drastically. "What do we do?" Viola asked, fighting to keep panic from her voice for Catherine's sake. Hotah pointed to a dense grove of pine trees that clung to a nearby slope. "Hide there with Catherine. I will lead them away, then circle back." "No," Viola protested. "We stay together." "If we stay together, we will all be caught," Hotah countered, his voice gentle but firm. "This is not abandonment, Viola. It is strategy." Before she could argue further, the distant sound of hoofbeats grew louder. There was no time for debate. With a quick embrace, Viola gathered Catherine and their few belongings and hurried toward the sheltering pines. "Be careful," she called softly to Hotah, who had already mounted his horse. His eyes met hers one last time, conveying what words could not in that moment. Then he turned and rode deliberately in the opposite direction from their hiding place, leaving tracks that even a novice could follow. From their concealment among the trees, Viola and Catherine watched as a group of 7 riders crested a nearby ridge. Lieutenant Davis led them, his blue uniform stark against the winter landscape. Beside him rode a lean, hard-faced man, whom Viola recognized as Jenkins despite having never met him. The tracker pointed to Hotah's fresh tracks, and with a triumphant gesture, Davis led his men in pursuit. "Will they catch him?" Catherine whispered, her small body pressed against Viola's side. "No," Viola said with more confidence than she felt. "Hotah knows these mountains better than anyone." They remained hidden as the sound of pursuit faded into the distance. Minutes stretched into an hour, then 2. The winter sun began its early descent toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the snow. Still, they waited, Viola fighting against growing anxiety with each passing moment. "He should have returned by now," she murmured, more to herself than to Catherine. The child, showing wisdom beyond her years, squeezed her mother's hand. "He promised. Hotah always keeps his promises." Just as Viola was considering their next move, whether to continue waiting or attempt to follow Hotah's trail, a sound behind them made her turn sharply, knife already drawn from her belt. "It is only me," came Hotah's voice as he emerged from the trees, approaching from the opposite direction than he had left. Relief flooded through Viola so intensely that her knees nearly buckled. "You're safe," she breathed. "For now," he replied, his expression grim. "I led them on a false trail that will take hours to discover, but Jenkins will not be fooled for long." As they prepared to continue their journey, Viola noticed that Hotah moved with unusual stiffness. "You're hurt," she realized, seeing how he favored his left side. "It is nothing," he dismissed. "A fall when my horse stumbled." But when they made camp that night in a sheltered ravine, Viola insisted on examining him. She gasped at the sight of the deep gash across his ribs, not from a fall but from a bullet that had grazed him during his flight from Davis's men. "You were shot!" she exclaimed, already reaching for her medicine pouch. "I did not want to worry you," Hotah admitted as she cleaned the wound. "It looks worse than it is." "You should have told me immediately," Viola scolded, applying a poultice of herbs she had gathered during their journey. Wounds like this can fester quickly. As she worked, Catherine held the small tin lantern they had brought, its light illuminating Hotah's copper skin and the lean muscles of his torso. The child watched with solemn attention, handing Viola supplies as needed, already learning the healer's craft through observation. "Will Hotah die?" she asked suddenly, her voice small but steady. "No, little one," Hotah answered before Viola could, reaching out to touch Catherine's cheek. "It would take more than one bullet to separate me from you and your mother." The simple declaration, spoken with quiet certainty, eased something in Viola's heart, even as her hands continued their careful work. When she finished bandaging his wound, her fingers lingered on his skin, tracing the scars that told the story of his life as a warrior and hunter. "I cannot lose you," she whispered. Hotah covered her hand with his own. "You will not." That night, as Catherine slept nearby, Viola lay in Hotah's arms, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Outside their small shelter, the wind whispered through pine branches, carrying the promise of more snow. They spoke in low voices of the journey ahead, of the life they hoped to build across the border, of the challenges they would face as a mixed family in a world that preferred clear divisions. "It will not be easy," Hotah warned. "Even in Mexico there will be those who disapprove." "Nothing worthwhile is ever easy," Viola replied, thinking of all she had already overcome, her family's rejection, the journey west, building a life alone with Catherine. "But we will face it together." Hotah's arms tightened around her. "Together," he agreed. Morning brought fresh snow and renewed urgency. Hotah's wound, though painful, did not slow their pace as they continued southwest. They traveled through increasingly arid terrain, the mountains giving way to rocky canyons and sparse vegetation. Game became scarcer, forcing them to rely on the dried meat and parched corn they had packed. On the 6th day of their journey, they reached a landmark Hotah had described, a distinctive rock formation that locals called the Sleeping Woman, for its resemblance to a recumbent female figure. "We are halfway to the border," he announced, as they paused to rest. "2 more days if we maintain this pace." The news should have brought relief, but Viola felt a growing unease. Throughout the morning, she had noticed Hotah checking their back trail more frequently, his expression becoming increasingly troubled. "What is it?" she asked when Catherine had moved ahead to examine a cluster of winter berries. "Jenkins," Hotah replied grimly. "He has found our true trail. They are perhaps half a day behind us now." Viola's heart sank. "How can you know?" "The ravens," Hotah explained, pointing to where several black birds circled in the distance. "They follow riders in winter, hoping for scraps. I have been watching their patterns." They pushed harder that day, stopping only when absolutely necessary. By nightfall, Hotah estimated they had gained some distance on their pursuers, but not enough to ensure safety. They made a cold camp, unwilling to risk a fire that might be spotted, huddling together beneath their blankets for warmth. Dawn brought a new challenge. Catherine woke with a dry cough and flushed cheeks, the beginning of a fever. Viola administered the herbs she carried, but worry gnawed at her. In her medical bag she had remedies for many ailments, but not the specialized medicines that might be needed if Catherine's condition worsened. "We cannot stop," Hotah said, his voice gentle but firm as he watched Viola tend to her daughter. "Davis will show no mercy, even for a sick child." "I know," Viola replied, helping Catherine onto the horse before mounting behind her. She could feel the heat radiating from her daughter's small body, not dangerous yet but concerning. But she needs rest and proper care soon. Hotah's expression softened as he touched Catherine's feverish cheek. "There is a place ahead, a small mission where the Padre helps all who come regardless of color or creed. We can reach it by nightfall." The promise of shelter and possible medical supplies renewed their determination. They traveled steadily through the day, Viola monitoring Catherine's condition while Hotah scouted their path. The child drifted in and out of sleep, her usual chatter replaced by silence, broken only by occasional coughing. As the sun began its descent, Hotah led them down into a narrow valley where a small adobe building stood beside a meager stream. The mission was humble, a single structure with a small bell tower, surrounded by a few cultivated fields now dormant for winter. "San Esteban," Hotah said. "The Padre here treated my cousin's burns when no one else would help." They approached cautiously, alert for any sign of danger. An elderly man in a simple brown robe emerged from the mission door, shading his eyes against the setting sun as he watched their approach. "Father Miguel," Hotah called. The priest nodded, studying them with keen eyes that belied his advanced age. "You bring trouble to my door, Hotah," he observed in accented English, his gaze moving to Viola and Catherine. "We seek sanctuary," Hotah replied. "The child is ill." Father Miguel's expression softened immediately at the sight of Catherine's flushed face. "Bring her inside," he directed, already turning toward the mission. "Quickly now." The interior of the small church was surprisingly warm, heated by a well-maintained fire in a corner hearth. The priest led them to a simple cot near the warmth, where Viola gently laid Catherine. "Fever?" Father Miguel asked, his gnarled hands already reaching for a wooden chest that contained medical supplies. "Yes," Viola confirmed. "Started this morning. She has a cough as well." As the priest examined Catherine, Hotah pulled Viola aside. "I must speak with you," he said quietly, leading her to the mission's single window that faced the way they had come. The gravity in his voice sent a chill through her. "What is it?" "Jenkins and Davis are closer than I thought," he said, his voice low. "Perhaps 2 hours behind us now." Fear clutched at Viola's heart. "We need to leave." Hotah shook his head. "Catherine cannot travel further tonight, and the mission will be the first place they search." His eyes held hers steadily. "I must lead them away, while you and Catherine remain hidden here." "No," Viola protested, though she knew the logic of his plan was sound. "It's too dangerous." "It is our only chance," Hotah insisted gently. "Father Miguel has a cellar beneath the church floor where you can hide. I will draw Davis away, then circle back when it is safe." The echo of their earlier separation in the mountains hung between them. The same strategy, the same risks, but now with Catherine's illness adding to the stakes. "Promise me you'll return," Viola whispered, gripping his hands tightly. "I promise," Hotah replied, his dark eyes solemn. "Nothing will keep me from finding you again." Their farewell was brief but intense, a desperate embrace, and a kiss that held both passion and fear. Catherine, drifting in feverish half-sleep, roused enough to accept Hotah's gentle touch on her forehead and his murmured promise to return soon. As Father Miguel revealed the hidden entrance to the cellar, a trapdoor concealed beneath a woven rug, Viola felt as though her heart was being torn in two. The logical part of her understood the necessity of Hotah's plan, but every instinct screamed against another separation. "He is a wise man, your Apache," Father Miguel observed as he helped Viola and Catherine into the cramped space beneath the floor. "And a brave one." "He is," Viola agreed, her voice thick with emotion. "Will you bless him, Father? For safety?" The old priest's eyes crinkled. "I already have, my daughter, many times over the years." He handed down a small oil lamp and a bundle of blankets. "Now we pray and wait." The trapdoor closed, plunging them into near darkness save for the small circle of light from the lamp. Viola gathered Catherine into her arms, feeling the child's feverish body tremble with each breath. Above them, she could hear Hotah and Father Miguel speaking in low voices. Then the sound of the mission door opening and closing. He was gone, riding once more into danger to protect them. Viola closed her eyes, sending a silent prayer into the universe, not to any specific god, but to whatever forces might guide and protect the man she loved as he faced their pursuers alone. In the confined space beneath the mission floor, with her sick daughter cradled against her chest, Viola Barnes waited in the darkness, suspended between hope and fear, between the life they had fled and the uncertain future that awaited them, if they survived the night. The oil lamp flickered, casting wavering shadows across the earthen walls of the small cellar beneath San Esteban Mission. Viola pressed a cool cloth to Catherine's forehead, trying to ease the fever that had only intensified during their hours of hiding. Above them she could hear Father Miguel moving about, his footsteps occasionally pausing near the concealed trapdoor, as if to reassure them of his continued vigilance. How long had it been since Hotah rode away? 4 hours? 5? The darkness and confinement made time impossible to measure with any certainty. Catherine stirred restlessly in her arms, mumbling words that shifted between English and the few Apache phrases she had learned from Hotah. "Shh, my love," Viola whispered, stroking her daughter's damp curls. "Rest now." A sudden commotion above made Viola freeze, the heavy thud of boots on the mission's wooden floor, multiple voices speaking at once. Lieutenant Davis had arrived. "I know they were here," came Davis's voice, sharp with authority. "We tracked them directly to your door, Padre." "Many travelers seek shelter at San Esteban," Father Miguel replied, his tone mild but unyielding. "I do not question those who come in need." "This isn't about charity," Davis snapped. "It's about harboring fugitives and enemies of the territory. The woman is wanted for questioning, and the Apache is a suspected raider." "Suspected," the priest echoed. "Or merely Apache." There was a dangerous pause, and Viola could almost feel Davis's anger radiating through the floorboards above her head. She covered Catherine's mouth gently with her hand, fearful that a cough might betray their hiding place. "Search the mission," Davis ordered his men. "Every corner." Viola's heart pounded as heavy footsteps moved across the floor above. She heard furniture being moved, doors thrown open, even the altar cloth being swept aside. Catherine's eyes opened, wide with fear, and Viola pressed a finger to her lips in the universal gesture for silence. The child nodded, understanding despite her fever. "There's no one here but me," Father Miguel insisted as the search continued. "And where might they have gone?" Davis demanded. "Their tracks end at your door." "Perhaps they continued on foot," the priest suggested. "Or perhaps the Apache used his skills to hide their trail." Another voice joined the conversation, lower with the distinctive accent of a man who had spent time among native tribes. "Jenkins." "There was only one horse leaving," the tracker said. "The Apache rode south alone, fast, like he was drawing us away." "From what?" Davis asked sharply. A terrible silence followed, during which Viola could imagine Jenkins scanning the mission floor, perhaps noticing the slightly uneven placement of the rug that concealed their hiding place. She clutched Catherine tighter, her free hand finding the knife at her belt. "From a cold trail," Jenkins finally replied. "The woman and child must have separated from him earlier, or he's leading us on a false hunt while they make for the border another way." Davis swore, the profanity echoing in the sacred space. "Where would they go? What settlements are within a day's ride?" "San Miguel is 20 miles southwest," Father Miguel offered. "Many travelers rest there before attempting the border crossing." The suggestion, Viola realized, was deliberately misleading. San Miguel lay in the opposite direction from their actual planned route. The old priest was trying to help them. "We ride for San Miguel," Davis decided. "Jenkins, take 2 men and continue following the Apache's trail. I want him alive if possible. He'll lead us to the woman." "And if that's not possible?" Jenkins asked, his tone suggesting his preference. "Then bring me proof he won't trouble the territory again," Davis replied coldly. More movement followed, the gathering of equipment, the scrape of weapons being checked and secured. Finally, the heavy mission door opened and closed, and the sound of horses moving away gradually faded into the distance. Several minutes of silence passed before light footsteps approached the trapdoor. "They are gone," Father Miguel called softly as he lifted the concealed entrance. "But they will return when they find I have misled them." Viola emerged from the hiding place, helping Catherine up the crude ladder. The child's condition had worsened during their confinement, her small body burning with fever. "She needs medicine," Viola said urgently. "Something stronger than what I carry." Father Miguel nodded, already moving to a cabinet near the altar. "I have supplies sent from Mexico City," he explained, withdrawing a small glass bottle, "quinine for the fever and herbs for the cough." As the priest prepared the medicine, Viola settled Catherine on a simple cot near the fire. "How long do we have before they return?" she asked. "A day at most," Father Miguel replied. "Less if Jenkins realizes I sent them in the wrong direction." He glanced toward the window, where the first grey light of dawn was becoming visible. "Your Apache friend. He is more than just a traveling companion, yes?" Viola met the elderly priest's eyes, expecting judgment, but finding only compassionate understanding. "Yes," she admitted. "Much more." Father Miguel nodded slowly. "Love is rare enough in this harsh world without men making rules about who may share it." He handed her the prepared medicine. "This will help the child, but she needs rest. Real rest, not more travel." "We don't have that luxury," Viola said, as she carefully administered the bitter liquid to Catherine. "Not with Davis hunting us." "Perhaps you do," the priest countered. "I have been thinking while you were hidden. There is a way to reach the border that even Jenkins may not consider." Hope flickered in Viola's heart. "What way?" "The old smuggler's trail through Devil's Canyon," Father Miguel explained, spreading a crude map on the table. "It is dangerous, narrow passages, difficult terrain, but it cuts 3 days from the journey to Mexico. Most importantly, few know of it. Those who do avoid it because of the risks." "And Hotah?" Viola asked. "How will he find us?" The old priest smiled. "I have sent a message with a trusted friend, a young Yaqui boy who helps at the mission. If your Apache follows his own trail back here, as I suspect he will, the boy will direct him to you." For the first time since fleeing her home, Viola felt a genuine surge of hope. She clasped the priest's weathered hands in gratitude. "Why are you helping us? It puts you at risk with Davis." Father Miguel's eyes crinkled at the corners. "I have lived too long and seen too much injustice to ignore love when it stands before me, no matter its form." He squeezed her hands gently. "Besides, Lieutenant Davis and I have our own history. He does not intimidate me." As the morning progressed, Catherine's fever finally broke thanks to the priest's medicine. Viola prepared for their departure, gathering supplies while Father Miguel carefully explained the smuggler's route. By midday, they were ready. "Wait until dusk," the priest advised. "The entrance to the canyon is less visible in the fading light, and you will have the cover of darkness for the most exposed sections of the trail." The hours passed with agonizing slowness. Viola alternated between tending to Catherine, whose strength was gradually returning, and watching the horizon for any sign of Hotah or Davis's return. As the sun began its descent, her anxiety mounted. What if Hotah had been captured? What if Jenkins had followed his orders to bring back proof that the Apache would trouble the territory no more? "He will come," Father Miguel said, seemingly reading her thoughts. "Have faith." "Faith has never been my strength," Viola admitted. The priest smiled gently. "Yet you have shown more faith than many who claim it loudly. You believed in a future that others said was impossible. You trusted your heart when society told you it was wrong." He handed her a small wooden cross. "Keep this. Not for any god you may doubt, but as a reminder that even in the darkest canyon, there is always a path forward if one has the courage to take it." As dusk approached, Viola made her final preparations. Catherine, though still weak, was alert and eager to be reunited with Hotah. They would travel on the mission's single mule, slower than a horse, but more sure-footed on the treacherous canyon trails. "It is time," Father Miguel said as the sun touched the western mountains. With a heavy heart, Viola embraced the elderly priest. "I can never repay your kindness." "Live well," he replied simply. "Love deeply. That is repayment enough." They were preparing to depart when Catherine suddenly cried out, pointing toward the northern ridge. "Look!" A lone rider approached, silhouetted against the crimson sky. Even at a distance, Viola recognized the fluid way he moved with his horse, as if man and animal were a single being. "Hotah," she breathed. relief washing through her like a cleansing tide. They watched as he navigated down the ridge with practiced ease, approaching the mission from a direction that suggested he had circled widely to avoid being tracked. When he finally reached them, Viola could see the exhaustion etched in his face, the new cuts and bruises that told of a difficult journey. But he was alive. "You came back," she said as he dismounted. "I promised," he replied simply, his eyes saying what words could not. Catherine broke free from Viola's hold and ran to him despite her weakness. Hotah lifted her into his arms, his stern features softening as the child wrapped her arms around his neck. "I knew you would come," she declared with absolute certainty. Over Catherine's head, Hotah's eyes met Viola's. "Davis." "Gone to San Miguel, but not for long," she explained quickly. "Father Miguel has shown us another way to the border." The priest approached, greeting Hotah with respect. "The Devil's Canyon Trail," he explained. "Dangerous but direct. You know it?" Hotah nodded grimly. "My uncle spoke of it. Few attempt it. Few have as much reason as you," Father Miguel replied. "You must leave now, before Jenkins realizes I misled them." Their departure was hastened by the urgency of their situation. With Catherine secured before Hotah on his horse and Viola mounted on the mission's mule, they bid farewell to the priest who had risked so much to help them. "Go with God," Father Miguel called as they rode into the gathering darkness, "or whatever powers you trust." The entrance to Devil's Canyon was hidden among a series of seemingly impassable rock formations 2 miles south of the mission. Had Father Miguel not provided precise directions, they would never have found the narrow cleft that marked the beginning of the smuggler's trail. "Stay close," Hotah instructed as they entered the shadowy passage. "The path narrows ahead." He had not exaggerated. As they progressed deeper into the canyon, the trail became a mere ledge along sheer rock walls, barely wide enough for their mounts to navigate single file. Below them, invisible in the darkness but audible as a distant rush, a river carved its way through the canyon floor. They traveled through the night, Hotah leading with unerring confidence despite the treacherous conditions. Catherine drifted in and out of sleep against his chest, while Viola followed, one hand on the mule's reins, the other often brushing the canyon wall for reassurance. Dawn found them deep within the labyrinthine passages, the rising sun revealing the breathtaking and terrifying scale of their surroundings. Towering walls of red and orange stone rose hundreds of feet on either side, while the river, now visible as a silver ribbon far below, churned through narrow rapids. "We're making good time," Hotah said, as they paused to rest and water their animals at a small spring that seeped from the canyon wall. "If we continue at this pace, we'll reach the border by nightfall." Viola stretched her aching muscles, watching as Catherine explored a small patch of hardy flowers growing improbably from a crack in the stone. "And then?" she asked quietly. Hotah's expression softened as he looked at her. "Then we find my mother's cousin in Santa Teresa. Begin our new life." He touched her cheek gently. "Together." The moment of peace was shattered by a sound that froze their blood, the distant crack of a rifle, followed by the ping of a bullet striking stone near their position. "Jenkins," Hotah said grimly, already moving to gather Catherine. "He must have discovered Father Miguel's deception." Viola helped Catherine onto the horse, her mind racing. "How could he have found this trail?" "The same way we did," Hotah replied, scanning the canyon walls above them. "Someone told him." There was no time for further discussion. Another shot echoed through the canyon, this one coming closer to their position. They mounted quickly, pushing forward along the precarious trail at a pace that bordered on reckless. The next hours became a desperate race, with Jenkins and what sounded like at least 2 other riders in pursuit. The canyon trail twisted and turned, sometimes widening enough to allow faster travel, other times narrowing until they were forced to dismount and lead their animals through particularly treacherous sections. "The border can't be far now," Viola said, as they paused briefly to allow their exhausted mounts to rest. "Surely they'll turn back once we cross." Hotah's expression remained grave. "Davis will not give up so easily, not after we've eluded him for so long." He checked his rifle, a weapon he had rarely used during their journey, preferring to avoid confrontation. "We must be prepared to defend ourselves." The unspoken reality hung between them. If it came to violence, their chances against trained soldiers were slim. Viola thought of Catherine, who had dozed fitfully throughout their desperate flight, her recent illness leaving her vulnerable and exhausted. "There must be another way," she insisted. Hotah studied the canyon ahead, his keen eyes noticing details Viola would have missed. "There," he said, pointing to where the trail divided around a massive boulder. "The left path continues to the border crossing. The right appears to dead end, but actually connects to a series of caves my people once used as shelter." Understanding dawned on Viola. "A place to hide while they pass?" "Yes," Hotah confirmed. "But someone must lead them along the main trail. Make them believe we all went that way." The implication was clear. They would need to separate again. "No," Viola protested. "Not this time." "Viola," Hotah said gently, taking her hands in his. "Catherine needs you, and I can move faster alone, draw them away more convincingly." She knew he was right, but the thought of another separation, perhaps their last, was unbearable. "Promise me," she whispered fiercely. "Promise you'll find us again." Instead of answering with words, Hotah reached into his pouch and withdrew something that caught the light, a simple band woven from strips of leather and adorned with tiny turquoise beads. "In my people's way," he said quietly, "this is a promise, not of ownership but of walking beside each other through whatever comes." He slipped the band onto her finger. "I will find you, in this life or the next." The sound of approaching riders cut their farewell short. With one last fierce embrace they parted, Viola and Catherine taking the hidden path to the caves, while Hotah continued along the main trail, deliberately leaving clear tracks for Jenkins to follow. The cave entrance was exactly where Hotah had described, concealed behind a stand of scrubby juniper trees that somehow found purchase in the rocky soil. Inside it opened into a series of chambers, some bearing ancient paintings similar to those Viola had seen in the sacred cave, where they had made their decision to flee. "Will Hotah be okay?" Catherine asked, as they settled into the deepest chamber, where they would be safe from discovery. "Yes," Viola answered, praying it was true. "He's very clever and knows these canyons well." They waited in tense silence, listening for any sound that might indicate the outcome of Hotah's desperate gambit. Hours passed, the light at the cave entrance shifting as the sun moved across the sky. Catherine eventually succumbed to exhaustion, sleeping fitfully against Viola's side. Just as the cave began to darken with approaching evening, a sound at the entrance made Viola reach for her knife. She gently moved Catherine behind her, prepared to defend her child to the last breath. "Viola." Hotah's voice, barely audible, reached her from the outer chamber. Relief flooded through her as she rushed forward, Catherine close behind. Hotah stood in the cave entrance, silhouetted against the sunset, alive but clearly injured. He clutched his side, where a dark stain spread across his buckskin shirt. "You're hurt," Viola gasped, already moving to support him as he staggered slightly. "Jenkins," Hotah explained grimly. "He is more skilled than I gave him credit for." As she helped him deeper into the cave, Viola assessed his injury with a healer's trained eye. The bullet had passed through his side, missing vital organs, but causing significant blood loss. Working quickly with the supplies in her medicine bag, she cleaned and bandaged the wound while Catherine held their small lantern. "The others?" she asked as she finished securing the bandage. "Two turned back when we reached the steepest section," Hotah replied, wincing as he adjusted his position. Jenkins continued alone. "And now?" A grim smile touched Hotah's lips. "He will trouble us no more." Viola didn't ask for details, understanding from his expression that Jenkins had met his end somewhere in the treacherous canyon passages. One less threat, but not the end of their danger. "Davis will send others," she said quietly. "Yes," Hotah agreed, "but not tonight, and tomorrow we will be in Mexico." They rested through the night, taking turns keeping watch despite Hotah's injury. At first light they continued their journey, moving more slowly due to his wounded state, but with renewed determination. By mid-morning, the canyon began to widen, the walls gradually becoming less sheer as they approached its southern end. "There," Hotah said, pointing ahead to where the canyon opened onto a broad valley. "Beyond those hills lies Mexico." The sight gave them renewed energy. Even Catherine, who had been unusually subdued since Hotah's injury, brightened at the prospect of reaching safety. They pushed forward, emerging from the canyon into rolling terrain covered with sparse vegetation and occasional stands of mesquite. As they crested a low ridge, a new vista spread before them, a wide, shallow river glinting in the sunlight, marking the border between territories. Beyond it lay Mexico, and the possibility of freedom. "We made it," Viola breathed, scarcely believing they had actually reached their destination after so many obstacles. "Not yet," Hotah cautioned, scanning the landscape with practiced eyes. "The crossing still lies ahead." They approached the river cautiously, alert for any sign of patrols on either side. The water looked calm enough for safe passage, no more than waist-deep at its center, with a gentle current that wouldn't challenge their mounts. "Wait," Hotah said suddenly, raising his hand. "Someone is coming." Viola followed his gaze to see a rider approaching from the American side of the border, a single figure in a blue uniform that could only be Lieutenant Davis. He had separated from his men, perhaps guessing their destination and taking a different route to intercept them. "He's alone," Viola observed, hope mingling with apprehension. "Yes," Hotah agreed, "but armed and desperate. Such men are most dangerous." They had two choices: attempt to outrun Davis to the border or stand their ground and confront him. With Hotah injured and Catherine still recovering from her illness, the first option seemed wiser. Yet something in Davis's determined approach told Viola he would not give up the pursuit, even if they reached Mexican soil. "This ends here," she decided, her voice steady despite her fear. "One way or another." Hotah nodded, understanding her reasoning. "Take Catherine across," he instructed, handing her the reins to his horse. "I will deal with Davis." "No," Viola countered firmly. "We face him together, as equals, as a family." The simple declaration seemed to strengthen Hotah despite his wound. He straightened in his saddle, his expression resolute as Davis approached. The lieutenant reined his horse to a halt 20 paces away, his face flushed with exertion and anger. "Mrs. Barnes," he called, his voice carrying across the distance. "This has gone far enough." "I agree," Viola replied calmly, "which is why we're leaving the territory. You have no further cause to pursue us." Davis's laugh held no humor. "No cause? You've consorted with an enemy of the United States, fled questioning, and now appear to be eloping with a savage." His hand rested on his holstered pistol. "I'd say I have ample cause. The only savage here is the man who would hunt a woman and child across the wilderness for no crime beyond choosing their own companions," Viola countered, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Davis's expression darkened. "It's not too late," he said, his tone shifting to something he probably thought was reasonable. "Denounce the Apache, claim he coerced you, and I can still ensure your safe return." A few uncomfortable questions, perhaps, but nothing a respectable widow couldn't weather. The offer, the same one he had made at her homestead, still carried the same implied threat. Surrender to his authority, perhaps eventually to his unwanted advances, or face the consequences. "My place is with Hotah," Viola said firmly, "and Catherine's place is with both of us. We're crossing into Mexico, Lieutenant. You can either allow it, or—" "Or what?" Davis sneered, drawing his pistol. "You'll stop me. An injured Apache, a sickly child, and a woman against an officer of the United States Cavalry?" "Yes," Viola replied simply, her hand finding Hotah's beside her. "We will." Something in her calm certainty seemed to unnerve Davis more than any threat could have. His eyes darted between them, perhaps truly seeing for the first time the unbreakable bond that connected Viola and Hotah, the love that had given them the strength to survive everything the territory had thrown against them. "This isn't over," he snarled, raising his pistol. What happened next occurred with such speed that Viola would later struggle to recall the exact sequence. Davis fired, the shot going wide as his horse shifted nervously beneath him. Hotah, despite his wound, moved with lightning quickness, drawing and firing his own weapon in one fluid motion. Davis jerked in his saddle, his expression one of pure astonishment as he looked down at the spreading red stain on his uniform. His pistol slipped from suddenly nerveless fingers as he toppled slowly to the side, hitting the ground with a dull thud that seemed to echo across the empty landscape. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Catherine's small voice broke the silence. "Is he dead?" Hotah dismounted carefully, moving to check the fallen lieutenant. "Yes," he confirmed after a moment. "He will not follow us further." Viola felt no joy at Davis's death, only a profound weariness, and the relief that came with knowing their long flight was truly over. She dismounted, helping Catherine down as well, and the three of them stood together at the edge of the river that marked the boundary between their past and their future. "What happens now?" Catherine asked, looking up at the adults with complete trust. Hotah and Viola exchanged glances, a lifetime of meaning passing between them in that single look. He extended his hand to the child, while Viola took her other hand, forming an unbroken circle. "Now," Hotah said gently, "we cross the river together, as a family." Hand in hand, they led their horses into the water, leaving behind the body of the man who had pursued them so relentlessly, along with the prejudices and boundaries he had represented. The cool water swirled around them, washing away the dust of their journey, as they moved steadily toward the Mexican shore. As they reached the southern bank, Viola looked back one last time at the territory that had been both her refuge and her prison. Then she turned to face the new land before them, a place where they would build a life that defied convention, where Catherine would grow up knowing the best of both her mother's and Hotah's cultures, where love had proven stronger than the artificial boundaries created by those who feared difference. "Home," she said softly, the word both a question and an answer. "Home," Hotah agreed, his arm encircling her waist as Catherine danced ahead of them, already exploring their new world with characteristic curiosity and resilience. Together, they walked away from the river and into their shared future, a healer, a warrior, and a child who would one day combine the wisdom of both her parents. Behind them, the sun set on the American territory, while before them a new dawn waited, one they would face united by a love that had crossed borders both physical and spiritual to find its rightful place in the world. Dear listener, as the sun sets on our tale of Viola, Hotah, and little Catherine, I find myself reflecting on the courage it takes to follow one's heart, especially in a world that often tries to dictate who we should love and how we should live. In your lifetime, you've witnessed so many boundaries fall and walls crumble. You've seen the world transform, sometimes painfully, sometimes beautifully, as people have fought for the right to love freely and live authentically. Perhaps in your own journey, you too have faced crossroads where the easy path wasn't the right one, where courage was required to stand firm in your truth. Like Viola and Hotah, many of us have had to forge our own trails through life's canyons, navigating treacherous passages while carrying precious hopes for the future. We've all experienced our own Lieutenant Davis figures, those who would limit us, judge us, or try to force us into boxes too small for our spirits. And like our heroes, we have found that the greatest strength often comes not from confrontation, but from the quiet determination to continue forward, one step at a time, toward the life we know we deserve. As you rest tonight, I hope you carry with you the certainty that it's never too late to cross rivers into new beginnings. Your wisdom, earned through decades of experience, is a powerful compass. Trust it. The bonds you've formed throughout your life, whether with family born of blood or family created through love and choice, these are your true protection, your enduring shelter in life's storms. May your sleep be as peaceful as the New Mexico night sky, vast and deep and sprinkled with the light of possibilities. May you wake refreshed, carrying within you the same resilience that carried Viola and Hotah across borders both visible and invisible. And may you always remember that the most powerful healing medicine isn't found in any healer's bag, but in the love we give and receive, the connections we nurture, and the courage we find to be authentically ourselves. Your story continues to unfold, beautiful and unique. And somewhere, perhaps where the canyon meets the river, the spirits of those who defied boundaries to find love are smiling upon your journey, with heartfelt gratitude for allowing us to share this tale with you. Wild West Whispers, thank you for staying with us until the very end. If this story brought you comfort, hope, or even a tear or a smile, we kindly invite you to subscribe to our channel, leave a comment, like the video, and share it with someone you love. Your support truly comes straight to our hearts and gives us the strength to keep telling more stories full of love, healing, redemption, and powerful turns of fate. At the end of this video, you'll see a new story suggestion from our channel. Click it, and let yourself be surprised by another deeply emotional journey, just like this one, with love and gratitude. Wild West Whispers team.